What's up, everybody? It's Cole, and we haven't done a deck profile in a while, so we're coming at you with a fresh one. And this is quickly becoming one of my new favorite decks for the Transformers trading card game, being until this Friday when the Rise of the Combiners releases, in which case I'll probably have a few new favorite decks. However, I'm a big fan of this one because it's not too overpowered, and it's a good match, and it's a nice deck to play for just a friendly match where there's nothing on the line, like at tournaments or anything. It's just very fun to play casually. And so we're going to go over it. I call the deck Decepticon Leadership. As you can see, it runs Megatron, Decepticon Leader, and Decepticon Shockwave, Cybertron Commander. And as you will also notice, our star value is 21, which means when we get these star battle cards, there will be some room for improvement. We can add up to 4 star battle cards. So we'll get into the characters. By now, most of you probably already know what these characters do, but we're going to cover them anyway. So we have Megatron Decepticon Leader. He's a leader, tank, and he's ranged. He's got 2 attack, 12 health, and 3 defense. And when you flip to his tank mode, you may scrap a card from your hand. If you do, scrap an enemy upgrade. So, when I was compiling what to put together with Shockwave, I was going over all the Decepticons that I had and all the potential Decepticons I could use, and I just really liked this Megatron because it kind of goes with the idea of scrapping your opponent's cards, whether from hand or the field, so that's why I decided to go with Megatron. Then when Megatron transforms into his bot mode, he's got a really cool art, and he now has 4 power, 2 defense, and he's got Pierce 3, and that is the other reason I went for him. Because of that Pierce 3, so that way I can really get damage across, because with Shockwave, Shockwave is a source of constant damage, which is really nice. So now we'll cover Shockwave. Decepticon Shockwave, Cybertron Commander. He is a leader, spaceship, and specialist. So he is one of 2 spaceships, because I do believe that Cosmos has the spaceship tag as well, because I don't think they have the UFO tag. I believe he is spaceship. He is also a specialist. So in his alt mode, he is 6, 11, and 3, and when you flip to his alt mode, each player draws 2 cards. That part is really important because I want cards in my hand, and I want my opponent to have cards in their hand with how I've built the battle deck, but we'll get into the battle deck in a minute. When you flip him to bot mode, he is now just leader and specialist. However, you will notice he does lose 2 attack. He is now 4, 11, and 3. And so he does lose attack, but with this bot mode ability, I feel like that's a fair trade-off. So when a card is scrapped from your opponent's hand, your opponent chooses one of their characters and does 1 damage to it. And at first, I wasn't sure if discarding was the same as scrapping, but I was informed that when your opponent discards, it rules the same as if you have a card that makes your opponent scrap things. So if they play anything that makes them discard, they also have to apply the Shockwave effect if Shockwave is in bot mode. And I really, really like this combination. It's pretty interesting. So now that the characters are out of the way, we will get into the battle deck. We'll cover the most important cards in the battle deck first, and then we'll get into the rest of it. So, as most of you can probably guess, the most important cards are actions for the most part. So first up, we have 2 collateral damage. So each player chooses a weapon on one of their characters and scraps it, and then each player chooses a card in their hand and scraps it. So, as you've guessed, most of the key cards for the deck are going to include scrapping from my opponent's hand. So, we run this one out of 2 of. We have 3 computer sabotage. I run this one because I know the people that I normally play with, they'll get very large hands, and so computer sabotage controls that. And then Shockwave triggers once for each card discarded. So if they have 7 and I force them to discard 4, that is 4 instances of Shockwave's 1 damage that is going off. And that is why Sabotage is at 3. We have 3 Disruption. I really like Disruption. It's an orange, and I get to actually look at my opponent's hand, which is important because now I know what's coming up, and now I know how I want to upgrade or how I want to play my next couple of actions. So that is why Disruption is at 3, but also I specifically scrap and upgrade when I use Disruption. So that's also getting rid of any of the pesky upgrades that they might have in their hand, like Grenade Launcher or Force Field. Next up, we have 3 Disruptive Entrance, the same as Disruption, except it's blue, and now I'm scrapping an action. So it fulfills all the same requirements as Disruption. I'm looking at their hand, and that's very important, and I'm getting rid of pesky actions that might come up, which is also incredibly important. The point of a lot of this is I'm trying to limit what my opponent can play against me. Next up, we have 3 upgrades. We have the Rapid Ascent. When it is put on a ranged character, my opponent chooses a card from their hand and scraps it. So this can only go on Megatron. However, it is an orange, and it's when I play, so I'm not wasting an action to play this, and I'm still getting a scrap from it, which is very important for the deck. And then on top of that, it gives Megatron an additional defense if he's in bot or tank mode, which is pretty important because I try to keep Megatron as the damage absorber, so that way Shockwave doesn't get knocked out too early because he is slightly weaker than Megatron. And finally, the last most important upgrade in the deck, Brainstorm. I'm sure a lot of you probably guessed it was going to be this. But, yeah, I get to play 2 actions, so now Brainstorm, and I can play Computer Sabotage if they have a big hand, and then I can play any of my other actions that make them scrap cards, and now they'll be down to 2, hopefully 2. If I play Disruption and they have an upgrade, or Disruptive Entrance and they have an action, I'll bring them down to 2 cards in hand in a single turn. And that is very important because now Shockwave is stacking a lot of damage before I even attack. So I can potentially get a knockout on a bot that was fully at full health at the start of that turn, and I can get a knockout on it. So that is the key cards for this deck. And now we're going to go over the rest of them. And it's for the most part, you'll notice it's a pretty generic build. We're running 2 Rapid Conversion. That's another target for Brainstorm, and so that way I can potentially, if I need my opponent to have more cards in hand, I can transform Shockwave, then I can Brainstorm, play Rapid Conversion, bring him back, and then hit my last action on one of the discard actions. So we have that. We have 2 swap missions. This is a card that enables me to keep Megatron around a lot. So if I attack with Shockwave, and and then Shockwave takes some damage, and then when it gets back around to my turn, if I have swap missions, I can untap Shockwave, tap down Megatron, and then get another attack in with Shockwave, or if so it really helps Megatron take a lot of damage, or also if I have some of my upgrades on a character that increase their power and I want to use them again, or if I want to get max damage across like with Megatron, then I can untap Megatron if he's got a lot of good upgrades on him and then swing with Megatron 2 turns in a row. So it's got a lot of utility for if I want to attack with one of these characters again. Also, it's blue. I didn't get the exact count, but I'm pretty sure that I'm close to even on orange and blue. I might be a little more orange than I am blue, though. Next up, because I have a specialist, multi-mission gear. When I put this on a specialist, I may play an action. I didn't include this in the most important cards in the deck, simply because the most important cards want to scrap stuff. So yes, this does enable me to get an additional scrap in there. However, it's taking up an armor slot. And the most important armor upgrade in the deck obviously needs to be on my Shockwave and my Megatron, and not so in this case, since it's a specialist, on Shockwave instead of this. But if I'm in a pinch and I need to play another action, I can use the multi-mission gear to get a second action in during the turn. Or potentially, if I've used Brainstorm and then I've played an additional 2 actions, I can then use this to get a 4th action for the turn, which can be really good in and of itself. Next up, we have 2 Energon Axe. This is only at 2 because I only have 2. I would like to get another one, but I think it's okay at 2. This is one of the most important upgrades for Megatron, because now with his Pierce 3 will become Pierce 5. I can put it on a damaged character only, which Megatron is normally my character that's damaged first, if I go first. And it's bringing his total attack up to 7 with Pierce 5. So the Pierce 5 in and of itself is paying off, because even if I don't get him really big off of flipping, they're still going to take 5 damage unless they have Force Field, which will lower it to 4. But it's still, the Pierce is getting rid of that Force Field without me even trying. Next up, we have only 2 of the Multi-Tool, and the Multi-Tool kind of fits the same purpose. It only goes on Shockwave, and it allows me to play another upgrade. So I can Multi-Tool into Multi-Gear and then play an action or something like that. So it's not too much of an important one. It does increase Shockwave's attack. However, this isn't too much of a needed card for the deck, because I'm focusing more on the action side than the upgrade side. We have the best armor upgrade in the game, Force Field. This should be at a 3 of in any deck. I don't care what the deck wants to do. Force Field should be a 3 of, because against a lot of decks, it's mitigating a lot of damage. There have been situations where I've been playing my Twin Primes and I can potentially get, I believe it's like 9 or 10 damage across, but then Force Field mitigates that down to 4. So Force Field is the best armor in the game at this point, and potentially still might be the best armor even after Rise of the Combiners is released. It should always be at 3. Plus that white really helps too. Another standard 3 of, Grenade Launcher. It gives +4 attack, so even if it's for only a single turn, both of my characters are dealing, as long as they're in bot mode, their attack comes up to 8. If they are in alt mode, Shockwave's attack is up to 10 for the turn. Megatron's is only up to 6. However, for the most part, once I get Megatron to bot mode, he never flips back. Shockwave is normally the only one that gets flipped back and forth. But this is another card that should be that in my opinion should be a 3 of in every deck. It gives an additional power if you flip it, and it gives +4 power if you equip it. Next up we have, oh, not that one, Improvised Shield. This is only in here for the double orange. Well, I shouldn't say only in here. The double orange is the biggest part of this card, so when I'm attacking with Megatron or Shockwave, if I have no upgrades that are adding power, if I flip one of these, then I'm instantly getting 2, which is nice. And then the other reason, the tough 1. So for the most part, this upgrade only ever goes on Shockwave, so that way I can flip more blue potentially. But in my opinion, for this deck, the most important part is the double orange and not the tough 1. However, the tough 1 is still very nice to have, because I'm trying to deal as much damage with Shockwave as possible and then finish off with attacks, which is why the orange on the Improvised Shield is very important. For the last upgrade in the deck, and the last cards in the deck, a 3 of Armed Hovercraft. And this upgrade is here because it is very versatile. It gives an additional attack to Megatron because it can only be equipped on it can be equipped to Shockwave. However, I only want to equip it to Megatron so I can get the effect off. It's blue, which is nice. It offers an additional power, which is nice. And then when I equip it to my Megatron, I'm dealing 1 damage to each enemy, which can stack up very fast with bot mode Shockwave's ability. And that is why the Armed Hovercraft is at a 3 of. And that is my Decepticon leadership deck profile. If you like the deck or have any suggestions for how I can change up the battle deck, leave us a comment below and give us your suggestions. Once again, this was Cole from Geek Life Gaming, and we'll see you next time.